Welcome back, everyone. It's Eric from Rare Candy here. Today we are back with actually our very first Unified Minds deck profile. This is going to be for the Worlds post-rotation format. So we have cards all the way from Ultra Prism all the way up to Unified Minds that are going to be legal in for this deck profile here. So, and if you guys did miss it, we actually did feature this deck in a recent test grounds video as well. So if you guys do want to see how this looks in action, I'll have a link down below in the description for all of you guys to check that out. So let's get into it and see how this Aegislash deck is going to look. So up first we have 4 copies of Jirachi, fantastic starter Pokemon. Really has a lot of synergy with Aegislash in particular. Aegislash's damage output is based on the amount of items that you've played. So Jirachi, really good at helping you set up with the Stellar Wish ability to look at the top 5 cards of your deck, get a trainer card you find there. So it's of course good finding you Cynthias and things like that to get set up, but of course it's also good at finding you those item cards that you need in order to ramp up your damage output with Aegislash. So this is actually our only non-Aegislash Pokemon in the entire deck. Everything else is going to be the Aegislash line. So we have 4 copies of Honedge, as you would imagine, and we are choosing to play the Honedge from Forbidden Light. Has this ability: if it gets knocked out, your opponent takes 3 damage counters, or actually you get to put the 3 damage counters anywhere that you like. I'm not sure if it's one Pokemon or anywhere. Okay, yeah, you put 3 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon, so not quite anywhere you like, but close enough here. So this is definitely, I think, the Honedge that we like, especially in the early portions of the game. If we have to sacrifice some Pokemon before we get set up, throw a spell tag on this guy, and you effectively have 7 damage counters to play with without even attacking. So this is definitely my favorite one as of the moment. Next up, we have 4 copies of Double Eight. This is going to be the new one from Unified Minds. Not really too much special about it. It does have an attack for a colorless energy we can do. 30 goes through weakness and resistance, so nothing too special, but sometimes if we need just to put a little bit more damage on the board, I guess it can get you there. But most of the time we just need it as a vessel to get all the way up to Aegislash. And of course for Aegislash we are going to be playing 3 copies here. So Aegislash is the main and basically only attacker in the deck, and 3 copies actually might seem a little bit low. Especially being the only attacker, but Aegislash has this ability: whenever it gets knocked out, you get to put it all the way back into your hand. I believe you do have to discard the cards attached to it, but it does work, very similar to the old Splash energy that Greninja decks played, or even the old Rescue energy going back many other sets. So in a format without things like Rescue Stretcher, this is actually a really fantastic ability, allowing us to kind of bypass one of the big downsides to the format that this Aegislash is going to be in. So just being able to recycle these things every turn is really good. I really do like this ability. And the attack here, just for 1 colorless energy, 10 times the amount of item cards in your discard pile. So kind of like the opposite of the Garbodor that we actually just lost in rotation. And you are capped at 130. That is definitely something that is a bit of a bummer about this card. You do have a damage cap at 130, but that's where things like Spell Tag and Shrine of Punishment, which we'll show off later, will kind of come into play to kind of mitigate the average amount of damage we're doing. But yeah, the goal is basically we get this thing set up, and once you get 1 Honedge, Double Aid, and Aegislash in play, you can actually recycle the entire evolution line every single turn, and you don't even have to find more of these throughout the course of a game. Because that's another big downside a lot of Stage 2 decks we have is, you have to constantly find these Stage 2s, constantly find rare candies and things like that. But Aegislash really does a nice job at getting around some of those typical downsides Stage 2 decks have. So that's going to be the reason for playing this guy, and then just 1 copy of Ditto Prism Star to round out the list. Basically just serves as a 5th Honedge for games that we might prize them. Also playing another Pokemon makes our communications a little bit more consistent as well. So like I said, we're just going all in on Aegislash with a couple of Jirachis to help us kind of coast along. Next up, going into our trainer cards, we have 4 copies of Lily here and 4 copies of Cynthia. So we still retain both of these supporters in the new post-rotation format, and they are still among some of the best that we're going to have access to here. Lily, of course, draw until we have 6 or 8 if it's our first turn, and Cynthia's just a nice shuffle and draw 6. Next up, we have 3 copies of Shrine of Punishment. This is going to be one of the key ways we're going to be able to, kind of modify our damage output throughout the course of a game here. So of course, 1 damage counter in between turns on GXs and EXs. 130 in conjunction with spell tags is pretty easy for Aegislash to handle most of the non-GX stuff that floats around, but Shrine of Punishment is going to do a nicer job at helping us get those GXs within knockout range. So going on to the rest of our trainer cards, there are a good bit of them. We play mainly items in this entire deck. So first we have 4 copies of Pokegear 3.0 here. So just look at the top 7 and get a supporter there, we need items to put in the discard anyways, so it's better to run these as opposed to a higher physical supporter count in this deck, kind of because of that. We also have 4 copies of Spell Tag, as I've already kind of mentioned. So if it's attached to a Psychic Pokemon and they get knocked out, we get to put 4 damage counters anywhere we want on our opponent's field. So this is going to make our damage output a little bit nicer and actually help us maybe take some double knockouts at different points in the game with the kind of like spread effect that we have here. Up next, we have 4 copies of Mysterious Treasure. This is definitely by far one of the best search cards that we have access to in this post-rotation format. So any deck that can abuse this, I think automatically gets a little bit of an edge compared to some of the other types. So of course we discard a card from our hand and search our deck for a Psychic Pokemon. So we can toss out their items or, whatever we don't need and, more easily find our evolution pieces. Next up, we have 4 copies of Duskstone as well. It's a card we actually got back in Unbroken Bonds. Really hasn't seen too much talk with Aegislash because there hasn't really been a good one up until now. But allows us to search our deck for a Pokemon that evolves from our Double Aid, including GXs if we do want to do that. And we can just evolve right into it, even on the first turn that we've played it. So turn 2, we can evolve into Double Aid, Duskstone into Aegislash, and then start attacking on the second turn. So, and of course, it's another item that we can get in the discard in the process to help fuel our Aegislash. So up next, we have 2 copies of Pokemon Communication. This is another way we can kind of find some of our Pokemon. Actually, it's pretty nice at putting Aegislashes back in the deck. Sometimes if you have a couple in your hand and your Duskstones won't work, you can put Communication, Aegislash back into the deck, grab something else out, and then you can use Duskstone to fetch that Aegislash you just put back in. And it's a way we can search out Jirachi and Ditto. Without Communication, there's not really any great way of doing that. And then we have 2 copies of Rare Candy as well. So this is an alternate way of getting our Aegislashes into play, without Duskstone. Sometimes you have the combo pieces needed for Duskstone. Sometimes you have the combo pieces for Rare Candy. So we're playing the heavier count of Duskstone just because I think it is generally going to be a little bit more consistent. But there are a lot of situations where Rare Candy has really been a big help in this deck so far. So up next we have 2 copies of Skateboard. So this is of course going to be for our Jirachis to give it some free retreat here. So it allows us to retreat even when we're asleep, which Stellar Wish will do to our Jirachis, unfortunately. So this gives us kind of a nice pivot Pokemon in between every knockout. And we also play 2 copies of Switch as well. This is another way we can, move around our board a little bit, especially do like a double Stellar Wish in one turn. We can like retreat our one with board, use our second Stellar Wish, then switch into Aegislash, keep attacking. Also another item we can just burn to, fuel our Aegislash's attacks. We also have 3 copies of Acrobike. Fantastic card for this deck because we need items in the discard, and it's another way we can actually dig and draw more cards in a given turn as well. Honestly, wouldn't even mind finding a space for a 4th one. That's definitely a consideration as well. But we look at the top 2 cards, pick one, discard the other. So, we can even discard an item to fuel our Aegislash a little bit quicker, but also just, help us find some of the key pieces we need in the course of a game. And next up, we have 3 copies of Reset Stamp. This is a new card that we're getting in Unified Minds. Very, very powerful one. And admittedly, this is a card you typically wouldn't see in counts this high. I think most decks are going to play maybe 1, maybe 2 copies of Reset Stamp, but we're playing kind of the thick count here. Not only because is it like a burnable card that we can just put away because you can play it and then your opponent shuffles their hand into their deck, draws equal to the amount of prize cards they have remaining. So we can just play this at any time to fuel our Aegislash. But also, one thing that is unfortunate about this deck, it really doesn't have a great late game sweeper. So you're kind of reliant on, in the late game, once you've established your loop of Aegislashes, once your opponent gets down to 3 prize, you want to reset stamp them every turn to ensure that they can't close out the game. So starting on that 3rd prize, you're going to reset stamp for your next couple turns every time your opponent takes a knockout. So that's why we're playing this one. And then just to round out the list, we have 3 copies of Recycle Energy. This is, yet again, another new card we're getting in Unified Minds. Has a ton of synergy with Aegislash here. It's another kind of old reprint. I think it got printed, what was it, in Neo Discovery? Might have been Neo Genesis? I forget. It's been a very long time since we've had this card. But if it's discarded from play, instead of going to your discard pile, it comes right back to your hand. So that means when we get this thing down on Aegislash, and our Aegislash gets knocked out, we get the whole evolution line back, we get our Recycle Energy back, and we can just keep attacking, and we don't even have to, find more attackers, once we've kind of get this whole loop set up. And just to kind of explain about these counts, again, 3 Aegislash looks weird, 3 Recycle Energy looks weird, but you're never going to use all 4 in the course of a game. You really basically just want 2 or 3 just in case you prize 1 or 2. So that's why we're not playing the 4 count. And, in the first couple turns, you really don't even mind that you're not finding them just because you don't have a huge discard pile of items yet. Typically, you want to find this, turn 3 on average, because turn 2, you can find it, but your Aegislash is probably hitting for maybe 80, 90 on average in my experience, which is still fine. But really by turn 2 or 3, you should be able to find one of the 3 and be able to start attacking. But yeah, guys, this is going to be the list for Aegislash we're going to be trying out here. This deck is actually a ton of fun, and one of my favorites I've been able to kind of mess around with so far out of the few Unified Minds archetypes I've tested so far. It's pretty consistent, hits decently, it's a lot of fun, gets past a lot of the downsides to this post-rotation format, like I said, with the lack of recovery, with the lack of search for a lot of the other types. So definitely feel free to try this thing out. It's a blast to play. But yeah, guys, definitely stay tuned to the channel. We're going to have a ton of Unified Minds content coming your way. So be sure to like and subscribe. And if you can, also feel free to support us over at patreon.com/rarecandytcg or by picking up some merch from our online store, rarecandytcg.com. It would mean a lot. But as always, guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.